Welcome back, folks. This vlog is a review of the She's Gotta Have It Netflix series. I will be recapping and reviewing episodes 3 and 4. I'm going to try to keep this under half an hour because both of these episodes are, I can say, dense, right? And they deal with a lot of serious issues that women face as far as sexual harassment and sexual autonomy. So I'm going to try to break it down as much as I can and keep it under a half an hour. So, starting with episode 3, which is titled LBD or Little Black Dress, which is written by the esteemed playwright Lynn Nottage. And I have to say this is actually one of my favorite episodes of the whole season. So when we ended at episode 2, we saw that Nola, after being sexually harassed by this stranger on the street, decides to reclaim her power by creating this artwork, this street artwork. She creates these posters with pictures of women of color, and they're all titled "My name is not Mamacita," "My name is not Boo," "My name is not Sweetheart," "My name is not Bitch." All of these, you know, terms that men yell at women on a typical day when they're walking down the street. So at the end of episode 2, Mars is riding back from work one night and he notices that somebody has defaced Nola's artwork, right? It's some person named Onyx, and they spray paint a picture of a penis and just basically just really disrespectful. And so when we get to episode 3, the start of episode 3, Mars takes Nola to see this defaced art, and this just makes her feel violated on a whole other level, right? So in order to deal with her feelings and emotions, she decides to call up a therapist that her friend Clorinda had suggested for her. So we're introduced to Dr. Jameson, who is played by Heather Headley, and I have to tell you that I love her in this role. I wish that I had a therapist like this woman. She's just very very well put together, and she has like this very soothing voice. So Nola decides to see her. And I really love this scene because, one, we're seeing the depiction of Black women being in therapy. We've seen it in Girlfriends, we've seen it in some other shows as well. And I'm glad that they are not using this as a punchline, right? Because, there's definitely a lot of feelings in the Black community as far as seeking, therapy or psychological care. It's seen as a weakness or a failing of the person if they feel, if they have to see somebody. So I'm glad that this is normalized in the series, because if you watch the 1986 movie, there is a scene where Nola sees a therapist who is actually referred to her by Greer, right? Because Greer is feeling like she's a nymphomaniac or a sex addict. So Nola sees a therapist who's actually played by Esapatha Murkison. But in the movie, Nola only goes for one session and she never comes back. She basically calls, her therapist and says, you know what, I'm good. I figured it out. I don't need to come back. Whereas in the series, Dr. Jameson is now a recurring character. Pretty much almost every episode we see Nola on the couch talking to a therapist, and I'm glad that we had a Black woman therapist. That's a plus. So this scene was really great to me because, the first 2 episodes we saw, like this really resolved and confident Nola, and when she sits on, Dr. Jameson's couch, she breaks down, you know what I mean? And because there's a lot that she's going through right now, the personal thing with, Greer, Mars, and Jamie, and then being sexually harassed, and then having her art defaced. It was just really refreshing to see a Black woman character who did not have to subscribe to the strong Black woman trope. That Black women, we are fragile, we are vulnerable, and we don't know everything. We don't have the answers to everything, although on the surface it does seem that we do. But yeah, sometimes we need help. Sometimes we just need to break down. Sometimes we need to we're tense. We have the weight of the weight of the world on our shoulders, right? Because we're dealing with being black, we're dealing with being women. So, on a daily on an average day, we're dealing with both sexism and racism, right? And then if you compound that with, being queer or disabled or any other intersection, it's a lot. It's a lot, especially, being in America. So I really appreciated that we were able to see Nola in a very a safe place where she could just pull down all of these walls and armor and just kind of really show the sensitive side of her. So that was great. And so, yeah, Dr. Jameson suggests to her that she should do something for herself, right? So Nola in the next scene decides to go shopping, do some therapy, retail therapy with Clorinda, one of her good friends. And so they go to this shop in Fort Greene. She tries on some dresses and she finds this little black dress. It's this really cute black velvet dress. The shoulders are cut out, kind of short, but she's working it. DeWanda Wise has an amazing body, and so she decides this is the dress that I'm going to wear just to kind of boost my confidence back up. And this is where the episode gets interesting, right? Because throughout the episode, we see Nola wear this dress with Jamie, with Mars, and with Greer, and there are three different reactions. These men react to the dress in very different ways. Well, similar ways, but they kind of go about it in their own way. So, first up is Jamie. She decides to wear the dress. Jamie has this really expensive car pick her up, and they have dinner at the River Cafe, which is beautiful, beautiful skyline. And of course, while Jamie is enamored with how beautiful and how sexy she looks, once they walk into the restaurant, he's kind of trying to hide Nola. He gives her a jacket. I guess you could say disapproving, right? He kind of sees how other people in the restaurant are responding to Nola and how she looks in this dress. And so he's trying to give her a jacket and she throws the jacket off. And so the dinner has a little bit of a tenseness to it because while they're having dinner, two of Jamie's work associates are there. And of course, we know that Jamie is married, and I'm sure he was sort of like, this is not my wife. Nola picks up on it and tells him, listen, I know we're not committed, but what you're not going to do is make me a secret, right? Okay, so he reassures her. They get back to Nola's house, and while he's asking if he can come upstairs, Nola's like, yeah, well, I felt like you didn't really like the dress. Jamie's like, no, it was cool. I was just feeling protective, whatever. And so, she's being coquettish with him, right? But you can tell that she's probably going to bring him upstairs. And then Jamie puts his foot in his mouth. And then he says, hey, well, if you don't want this kind of attention, then you shouldn't wear a dress like that. And that's the end of the end of that. And so he basically talked himself out of ass. That's what he did. So Nola is very upset with him, walks upstairs and was like, you done fucked up. Okay. So door number 2, she decides to go out with Mars. So she wears the same dress. This time, with Jamie, she wore these black stilettos. With Mars, she wears the same dress with this denim acid wash jacket and a fresh pair of kicks, right? So, they end up going to this Jamaican dance hall concert, right? So Nola's dancing, by the speakers, and then this guy, I guess, is, trying to talk to Nola, and Mars is kind of running interference. They run out of the club, before a fight breaks out, and then that's when Mars says, that dress is like black on black crime, right? And he was like, well, that dress was kind of like, gonna get us in trouble. Strike 2. So now Nola is like doubly upset. She was like, okay, these men need to take responsibility. It's not, I should be able to wear what I want. And you shouldn't be mad at me. You should be mad at the guy at the club because he doesn't know how to behave. Okay, so that's done. She's upset with Mars. So door number 3. Now she's going out. She decides to go visit Greer at his apartment. He's in the middle of a photo shoot. She's wearing the same dress. This time she's wearing a leather jacket and these really cute booties, right? Now, what's interesting about the scene with Mars is that Mars actually does not, Greer actually doesn't judge her for the dress, right? He doesn't say to her, it's too short, it's too sexy. If anything, he's like turned on, he's trying to, get with her. And then she was like, no, we only have sex in my bed. I don't feel comfortable having sex in the apartment. So then Greer decides, let's do a photo shoot. So she's standing there, he's taking the pictures. And I think Greer went a little extra because now she's feeling objectified, right? Because now he's like, my camera's getting a hard on, and just saying like these very sexually provocative things. And then she bounces, right? So 3 guys, 3 strikes out. And I really enjoyed this episode because the dress was really a metaphor, right? It's really a metaphor of women's sexuality and how we present ourselves to the world, and how we live in a world where men's inappropriate behavior, men are never beholden to that. Women are always blamed for that, right? That if we are seen as dressed too provocatively, if our skirt is too short, the dress is too tight, and if a man dares put his hands on us or does something that violates our space or our bodies, as women, we're the ones that are held responsible for that, and the men are never held accountable. So I thought that the 3rd episode did a really good job in exploring this, and really made me think, because the thing with Nola is that I noticed that how every dress she kind of adjusted it right to the man that she was with. So with Jamie, it was like the heels, and then with Mars, it was the sneakers, and then with Greer, it was a little edgier with the jacket and with the boots, right? And so even in her way, even while she's saying she wants sexual autonomy, in a way she is still kind of bending herself in a certain way to the appeasement of the man that she's with. So I thought it was interesting that while she's like, I want sexual autonomy and I want to be able to wear what I want, but at the same time she is kind of fitting herself into how, or the personalities of these men that she's with. So I found that interesting, which leads us into episode 4. So episode 4 is called Love is Love, right? Or Sexual Fluidity. And this one is written by Issa, E-I-S-A Davis. So I think it's Essa or Isa Davis. This episode, I have to be honest with you, I struggled with this one. Because in the 4th episode, in the opening of the 4th episode, we know that Nola has put have put the men on a timeout. And in her opening monologue, she basically says that she's going on a internal cleanse, right? So no social media, no alcohol, no weed. And on top of that, no penis, right? Or as she says, there will be no penis between us, which was a great call out to Jungle Fever, because that was a line from that movie. So I love that the writer put that in. So what's interesting with this is that she says, I'm on a break from penis, but that doesn't mean I can't smash, right? Which then leads us to the introduction of Opal Gilstrap, right? Now, Opal Gilstrap was a character in the original 1986 movie. She was a lesbian. In the movie, she was a lesbian, and clearly she had feelings or was attracted to Nola's character. But the Nola that was in the movie was straight, right? And so the depiction of Opal, when you look at the 1986 movie, was pretty problematic, because she kind of fit into this trope of like the predatory lesbian who's sort of like, well, how do you know you're not a lesbian unless you try it? And throughout the movie, she's like trying to be more intimate or closer to Nola, when it's clear that Nola is straight and prefers men. So what's interesting in this update is that they've brought back the Opal character. In this iteration, we find out that Nola is actually fluid. She's queer, right? Bisexual, queer, whichever word you want to use. And so in this episode, we see that Nola reaches out to Opal, and, they make love and they start hanging out with each other. Here's my beef with this. While I love the Opal character and I love the actress who portrays her, I just wasn't crazy about how they introduced Opal. It was only when Nola said that she did not want to be with men and be intimate with men, then it's sort of like, this is my backup, right? Well, since I'm not going to sleep with men, then, I might as well sleep. I'm going to get with Opal. I'm going to sleep with this other woman. And I just felt that that was a poor way to introduce the character. I felt that if Opal had been introduced from the beginning, while you introduce Mars, Greer, and Jamie, Opal needed to be in the mix from that, right? And so what happens is that when you have these sort of depictions of women who sleep with other women because they're mad at men, well, fuck men, I want a man, I'm gonna be with a woman. And that's just not how bisexuality works. And I've been like holding my tongue. I didn't want to say anything on Twitter, but I watched the episode 3 or 4 times because I was like, well, maybe I'm missing something. Maybe I'm being too hard, but I'm not, right? Women who are sexually fluid or women who are bisexual, they are attracted to men and women. Or, if you're pansexual, you're attracted to men, women, trans people, not, gender non-binary people. It's the spectrum, right? So the thing is, to me, and this is just my opinion, it would seem to me that if Nola was bisexual or someone who was attracted to both genders, men and women, we would have seen that balance from the beginning, right? But to just show her turning to women when she's mad at the men in her life, how can I say this without offending people? It's these kind of depictions and this kind of thinking that has created a certain animosity, right, between lesbian women and bi-curious women or bisexual women, right? Because there's this idea that bisexual women or bisexual women or bi-curious women, they're not to be trusted, right? They only turn to women when they've broken up with their boyfriend or they're mad at the male gender, at all men, and then they get with a woman, and then once they get back with their boyfriend or everything is fine, it's like, well, I really wasn't into women anyway. And so it's these kind of depictions, these kind of feelings that make it harder, I think, for me. I think it's these kind of depictions or this kind of thinking that makes it harder for bisexual women to be taken seriously. And I'm going to add bisexual men too, right? Because the idea is that bisexual people can't make up their mind. They're confused. You got to pick a side. And that's not what, sexual fluidity is about. It's not about picking a side. It's about, enjoying and being attracted to different genders across the spectrum, whatever your spectrum is, right? You're attracted to men, you're attracted to women, that's fine. And so to me, to say that Nola only wants to be with a woman when things aren't going right with her men, that's kind of a jacked up message. Now here's the thing. It could very well be that this is what the writer wanted to express with the Nola character, right? Because we know Nola by nature, just in general, is someone who's very flighty and is very impulsive, right? And clearly she's not has chosen not to commit to anybody. She wants to be a free spirit, right? So I'm wondering if that was the intent of the writer, to show how Nola is irresponsible in the fact that she could only feel that she could be with a woman when things weren't going right with men. And that is a failing on Nola's part, right? That could be something that's very interesting, because the truth is, I'm sure if you speak to some lesbian women, they will give you war stories of women that they met at a club or whatever. You know what I mean? Sometimes they were heterosexual up until the point that they meet this, they meet a lesbian, and then they start a sexual relationship or a relationship, and then it gets to a point where they feel that either A, they don't want to be outed, or B, they don't feel that they can really have a future with another woman because they're like, well, you can't give me babies, you can't give me kids or whatever. So it's this idea where, non-lesbian women are just sort of exploiting lesbians, you know what I mean? Or just exploiting women who love women for their own selfish purposes. And then once they feel that they're back together, then they just run back to men. So, I'm friends with a couple of lesbians, and I've heard these stories that there are women who do that, right? And, there are women who are truly sexually fluid. There are women who are truly bisexual. And unfortunately, there are some women who just feel that they're, it's fair weather lesbianism for them. You know what I'm saying? It's like, when I decide I want to be with the woman, I'll be with the woman. But they would never look at a woman. And I think this is my issue. I think the issue is when women who are bi-curious or whatever get with other women, but they don't take these women seriously. You know what I mean? Like they're like, well, I have sex with you, but I wouldn't be seen in public with you. And more importantly, I don't feel that we have a future, right? So all of this, I'm wondering if the writers were, trying to show this. And the thing with the Opal character is that what I also found interesting is that in this episode, we see Nola back in therapy. She's telling Dr. Jameson how wonderful Opal is and how, she feels safe with her, all of that. She doesn't feel that Opal pressures her to make any choices or decisions as far as, commitment or whatever. And so for me, what was interesting about that session is that she was so caught up talking about how Opal made her feel and, the feelings that she was getting from being with her. But I'm wondering if she was wondering, I wonder if she was giving any thoughts to Opal's feelings, right? Because what's interesting is that the episode before in Little Black Dress, she's frustrated with Mars, Jamie, and Greer because she's feeling like they're projecting all of these ideas and feelings about her, right? They're projecting because of the dress and they're making up what they think about her, right? And so she's feeling objectified. And what I found that was interesting in episode 4 is that in her own way, Nola turns around and she's objectifying Opal. Not in a sexual way, like in the Little Black Dress episode, but in the fact that she's putting all of these ideas and thoughts and fantasies about what Opal could do for her, right? Because all of a sudden, she's thinking, oh, maybe I could commit to being, in a monogamous relationship with Opal. So it's sort of like this lesbian fantasy that she has and projecting all of these thoughts and ideas into Opal when that may not even be the case, right? The thing with Opal is that from what we understand, she's older than she's older than Nola. She's a successful business owner. She owns a plant nursery in Fort Greene. She's a horticulturist, right? So, it's sort of like this whole the nurturing lesbian, right? And so Opal is just pretty much perfect. Like I'm watching this episode and I'm like, wow, I mean, this is amazing. Like she's beautiful, she's successful, she owns a beautiful home, she has a beautiful daughter. We find out that she had an old college friend who basically turkey basted, right? Gave his DNA, and this is how she has her daughter. And so Opal is very well put together. She's emotionally stable, and Nola is a mess. And, at the end of the episode, she does the unforgivable, right? She promises Opal's daughter that she will come home, that she will be by later to, bring a painting for her. But Nola gets caught up in Nola and comes to Opal's house super late. The daughter is already in bed. And listen, that is like the cardinal rule. If you are dating somebody with children, right? You do not mess with the kids. You do not do that. And so Nola has broken that rule, and I think Opal probably got caught in the fantasy too. Like, hey, maybe there could be something between us. And Opal pretty much realizes that, Nola has a lot of growing up to do, right? Because there's a part in episode 4 where Nola goes to a party, she comes back home drunk and looks in her purse and realizes she does not have her keys, okay? And so she's walking to her parents' house, parents are asleep. She doesn't doesn't want to wake up her parents, and then she's trying to call her friends to see if she could crash with them, but they're both busy living their lives. So, these are just examples of just showing how Nola, while she's asking for all of this autonomy and being independent and all of that, she's still very childish in a lot of ways. And I think Opal realized that. And there's more at stake for Opal, because it's not just her, it's her child too, because whoever she's bringing into her life will potentially be a stepmother or a parental figure, right? And she realizes that Nola is just not ready. And so she gives Nola her walking papers. So I appreciated that. I love that they gave Opal that kind of agency and autonomy, where she was just like, you're just a little too all over the place for me. And I just can't have this craziness in my home and around my daughter. So she sends her off. So yeah, I don't know. I'll probably have to watch episode 4 a couple more times. Again, like I'm saying, it could very well be that the writer of episode 4 was trying to show the callousness and the irresponsibilities of some bi-curious women, where they don't think, they're just in it for themselves, and they don't think about the feelings of the other woman that they're involved with, right? So and I think that's a very valid point, and I think it opens up a lot of discussions of what fluidity really means, right? Because I think someone had told me this. There's a term called heteroromantic, right, where you can be someone who's queer or bisexual, right? But if somebody were to meet you, you seem more heteronormative, right? So as an example, a bisexual woman who's like, yeah, I'm bisexual, but if you would look at her dating patterns, or go to her social media, she's talking about men all the time but hardly any other women. And probably, if you look at the people that she dates, she doesn't date that many women. Then for some people that falls under heteronormative or heteroromantic. While this person says that they're sexually fluid or bisexual, they still subscribe in a way to heteronormative dating patterns or sexual relationships. So the one thing that I realized about episode 4 is that sexual fluidity is complicated. It's complicated. It's not easily defined, and no one can define that for you, right? Because I could be like, well, a bisexual woman would equally date the amount of men, and it's like 5 men, 5 women, or whatever. But sometimes it doesn't work like that. Maybe as a bisexual woman, you'll date 7 guys and three women, or 3 women and 7 women and 3 men. Like, there's not really a sexual equation as to what defines fluidity or bisexuality. I think it is a case-by-case scenario of what you feel is right for you, right? But I think what is important in whatever you decide to do, that you have to take the feelings of the person into consideration, right? That you should be honest, and you should just, you should be open about who you are as a person, and not take advantage of people. So wondering if maybe that's what the goal of episode 4 was. But yeah, so that's my review of episodes 3 and 4. And I'll be back tomorrow to recap episodes 5 and 6. See ya.